Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I'm Adnan Iqbal. I welcome all of you, and in this video we are going to talk about the urea cycle. So far we have discussed about the amino acids and the proteins, and you know that we have 20 different types of the amino acids which make the proteins. And you also know that the ammonia in the body is being generated by the dietary proteins and by the breakdown of the tissue proteins. And you also know that the ammonia is toxic, so in order to eliminate the ammonia from the body, it has to be converted into the less toxic substance, which is urea. Now what is urea cycle? Urea cycle is a conversion of the ammonia which is toxic into a less toxic substance, which is urea. And the urea cycle occurs in the liver. Now the ammonia is produced in the body by the tissue proteins catabolism. Also we get the ammonia in the body by the purine and the pyrimidine catabolism. You know that the purine and the pyrimidine are the nucleotides, and the nucleotides have nitrogenous bases, so it is a source of the ammonia. And the other source of the ammonia in the body is by the dietary proteins. Now what really happens is that after the formation of the ammonia in the body, this ammonia is being attached with the glutamate, and by some ATP it forms the glutamine by the enzyme glutamine synthetase. Now then this glutamine then goes into the liver, where it gives away its ammonia, where that ammonia then goes into the urea cycle, then it is converted into the urea. So the reason the ammonia is coming into the liver to be converted into the urea, because the urea cycle only occurs in the liver. So the ammonia anywhere produced in the body has to come into the liver so that it can be converted into the urea by the urea cycle. So excess ammonia is toxic to the animals and the humans. And glutamine synthetase is an enzyme which adds the ammonia to the glutamate at the expense of some ATP. Then this glutamine is a non-toxic carrier of the ammonia, which brings the ammonia from all over the body to the liver. And then upon this glutamine, the glutaminase enzyme act, which will result in the liberation of the ammonia, and then this ammonia goes into the urea cycle, which is then converted into the urea, which is then eliminated out. So the normal blood ammonia levels are 15 to 45 microgram per deciliter, and if anyone has more than this numbers, then it means that the person has the hyperammonemia. Now the hyperammonemia is of two types. One is known as an acquired hyperammonemia, and the other one is known as an inherited hyperammonemia. Now in an acquired hyperammonemia, we get the hyperammonemia by some acquired diseases. Like if there is a disease of the liver, then because of the disease of the liver, the urea cycle will not function properly. And like in the case of the cirrhosis, which is the cancer of the liver, the ammonia level will not be able to convert into the urea, so there will be an increased ammonia blood level. In the case of the inherited hyperammonemia, it results from the genetic defects of the urea cycle enzymes. So you know that the urea cycle needs the enzyme so that the ammonia can be converted into the urea. So if there is being the defect in the urea cycle enzymes, the urea cycle will not function properly, and if the urea cycle not function properly, the ammonia will not be able to convert into the urea, so there will be an increased level of ammonia in the blood. Now the symptoms of the ammonia toxicity are the tremors, the slurring of the speech, the blurring of the vision, and in the extreme untreated cases it can result into the coma and the death. Now if the person is experiencing these symptoms and it also has some liver disease, the blood level of the ammonia should be checked for the patient, and if the blood level of the ammonia are more than the normal levels, then you can classify the patient as an hyperammonemia patient. So if you look at the structure of the urea, you can see that it has two nitrogen atoms, and it is also has carbonyl carbon. So the most terrestrial animals are those which lives on the land. So most terrestrial animals converts the excess nitrogen to the urea prior to excreting it. Why? Because the urea is less toxic than the ammonia, and the urea cycles occur mainly in the liver, and the urea cycle has 5 steps or 5 reactions. First 2 steps occur in the liver mitochondrial cell, and the other remaining steps occur in the liver cytoplasm. So one nitrogen atom in the urea, it comes from the glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme activity, and the other nitrogen comes from the aspartate amino acid. Now how these nitrogens are coming from these two atoms, you will understand in the next slide. Now the ammonia from the body is being attached with the glutamate, and then it forms the glutamine by the enzyme glutamine synthetase enzyme, which also requires some ATP. Then this glutamines come into the liver, where upon an enzyme glutaminase, the glutamine will give you the ammonia and the glutamate. And you know that glutamate is an amino acid which is also a source of the ammonia, and you also know that this glutamate go through the oxidative deamination by the glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme. So the glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme acts on the glutamate, which also results in the liberation of the ammonia. So you are getting this ammonia from the glutamine and also by the glutamate. So this ammonia which you are getting, then this ammonia combines with the carbon dioxide and the water, and your body has enough resources for the carbon dioxide and the water. So the ammonia is then combined with the carbon dioxide and the water, and it forms the carbamoyl phosphate, which then goes into the urea cycle. Now the point which I am trying to make is that the ammonia do not directly goes into the urea cycle. The carbamoyl phosphate goes into the urea cycle. So the ammonia has to convert into the carbamoyl phosphate, then this carbamoyl phosphate goes into the urea cycle. Because you know that the ammonia is a toxic, it is a very nasty substance, so it doesn't go directly into the urea cycle. It is converted into less toxic substance first into the carbamoyl phosphate, then it goes into the urea cycle. So this is the brief review about the urea cycle. Now what happens in the urea cycle, you know that the ammonia from the body, it comes into the liver. Then this ammonia is being attached with the carbon dioxide, and it forms the carbamoyl phosphate by an enzyme carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1. Then this carbamoyl phosphate goes into the urea cycle. Then this carbamoyl phosphate attaches with an ornithine, and it forms the citrulline by an enzyme ornithine carbamoyl transferase. Then after the formation of the citrulline combines with an aspartate and forms the arginosuccinate by an enzyme arginosuccinate synthase. Then after the formation of the arginosuccinate by the action of enzyme arginosuccinate lyase, it is broken down into the fumarate and arginine. And this arginine is, upon an action of enzyme arginase, it is again being broken down into the urea and ornithine. The urea which then goes into the bloodstream, then into the kidneys, and then it is being eliminated out, and the ornithine is then reused in the cycle. So the urea cycle consists of 5 steps. First two steps occur in the mitochondria, and the other remaining steps occur in the cytoplasm. Now we will talk in detail about the urea cycle. So this ammonia from the body comes into the liver mitochondria, and this ammonia combines with the carbon dioxide, and it forms the carbamoyl phosphate. Now you know that the ammonia is a toxic substance. So in order to convert ammonia into a less toxic substance, urea, ammonia has some demands. Now these demands are being provided in the form of some cash and some gifts. The cash is in the form of the ATP, and the gifts are in the form of some of the enzymes. So what really happened in the first step, you can see that this ammonia attaches with the carbon dioxide and it forms the carbamyl phosphate, and this process requires an enzyme which is the carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, and it also needs the energy, so it needs 2 molecules of the ATP. And this enzyme carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, it is also very demanding. It needs someone who can activate him. So the carbamyl phosphate synthase 1 is being activated by N-acetyl glutamate. So after the formation of the carbamyl phosphate, this carbamyl phosphate is being attached with an ornithine, and you know that ornithine is also a amino acid, but we haven't discussed ornithine in the 20 amino acid which we discussed earlier, because ornithine is an amino acid which do not form the protein, so it is a non-proteogenic amino acid. So the carbamyl phosphate attaches with an ornithine and it forms the citrulline by an enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase. And after the formation of the citrulline comes out from the mitochondria into the cytoplasm of the cell. So the first two steps, the formation of the carbamyl phosphate and the citrulline, they occurs in the mitochondria. And after the formation of the citrulline comes out from the mitochondria into the cytoplasm of the cell, and then this citrulline attached with the L-aspartate, which is also an amino acid, and it forms arginosuccinate by an enzyme arginosuccinate synthetase. And if you look at the structure of an arginosuccinate, you can see this part as a succinate part and this part is an arginine part. And this arginosuccinate is being then broken down into the fumarate and arginine by the enzyme arginosuccinase. The fumarate which is formed, it is not being wasted, it goes into the TCA cycle for the energy. So you know that the urea cycle needs the energy, so it can form some energy in the form of the fumarate. So after the formation of the arginine and fumarate, the arginine, if you look at the structure of an arginine, you can see that this part, we only need this part, and this part resembles like the urea. So this arginine, upon this arginine, the enzyme arginase acts and it breaks down the arginine into the urea, and the remaining part is being broken down into the ornithine. So the arginase break down the arginine into the urea and the ornithine. The urea which is formed goes into the kidney and it is eliminated out, and the ornithine which is formed is then reused again in the cycle. And you can see that in the urea cycle, ornithine is the first step. So the urea cycle is also called a ornithine cycle. So the urea cycle, you can see that urea cycle utilizes many enzymes and also needs energy. And if you look at the structure of the urea, you can see that this nitrogen in the urea, one nitrogen in the urea comes from this ammonia which comes in the liver from the body, and this ammonia, you are getting this ammonia by the glutaminase enzyme activity or by the glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme activity. So this ammonia, one nitrogen in the urea comes from this ammonia, and other nitrogen in the urea, it comes from this amino acid aspartate. So the reaction catalyzed by the carbamyl phosphate synthase 1 is a rate limiting reaction, and this carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, this enzyme is being activated by a molecule which is known as the N-acetyl glutamate, which is being allosterically activated. Now allosterically means the regulation of enzyme by an effector molecule by binding to an enzyme at a site other than the enzyme active site. So the consumption of the protein rich meal increases the level of the N-acetyl glutamate in the liver, leading to enhanced urea synthesis. Now what a wonderful mechanism the body has. Now you know that if you are consuming the high protein diet, so it will mean that you are that your body could have more ammonia level in the body. So if you have more ammonia level in the body, you need to convert into the urea, And if you need to convert this increased level of ammonia into the urea, you need more amount of the carbamyl phosphate synthase 1. And if you need more amount of carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, you need more N-acetyl glutamate to activate this carbamyl phosphate synthase 1. So the consumption of the protein increases the level of the N-acetyl glutamate automatically. So your body doesn't become deficient in N-acetyl glutamate. So the carbamyl phosphate synthase 1 and glutamate dehydrogenase are located in the mitochondria. They coordinate each other in the formation of the ammonia and its utilization for the synthesis of the carbamyl phosphate. Now what I really meant by that, you know that the glutamate dehydrogenase is an enzyme which results in the liberation of the ammonia from the glutamate in the oxidative deamination. Now if there is more glutamate dehydrogenase activity, it means that more ammonia will be liberated out from the glutamate, and if there will be more ammonia liberated out from the glutamate, you need this ammonia to be converted into the urea, so you need more carbamyl phosphate synthase 1. So with the increased activity of the glutamate dehydrogenase enzyme, so the carbamyl phosphate synthase enzyme will automatically increase because they are working in coordination to each other. So the remaining enzymes of the urea cycle are mostly controlled by the concentration of their respective substrates. So if any student have any question, they can post in the comment box. I will try to answer them. Thank you.